panel, so let's bring out these awesome women in motion. Welcome. Mic check. Yeah, you can hear me, right? Yeah. Welcome. First, just want to acknowledge that Lo Harris is obviously not on stage. Got a call from her last night that she's not feeling well. She sends her best. She's really sad that she's not here. So if you don't know Lo Harris, check out her Instagram. She's a wonderful human. She's really sad not to be here. So send her some well wishes, and we'll catch her next time. In terms of the panel, I'd love to start in terms of mentorship. Growing up, I was lucky enough to have really strong women in my life. My mom's in the room. Hi. And I just think that having someone to look up to in terms of a mentor is really helpful, but sometimes that's hard to find if you don't want to ask a stranger, like, will you help me? What have y'all experienced in terms of mentorships, and what do you advise people if they're looking to find someone to kind of help in that way? Megan?
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like I'm a good mentor is someone that like really gives you space to figure things out, but also maybe someone you can go to with the things that you're nervous to ask anyone else, especially when you're starting out. There's so many things you're just figuring out on the go. I feel like for finding mentors though, like the biggest thing is just like not being afraid to reach out to people, because most people really want to help, and like I think you'd be surprised by how many people don't necessarily take the risk of just like sending a message, and I feel like that's how I found most of my mentors, is just taking a chance and contacting someone and like getting some really great help.
Yeah, and just to like shout out an event like this, I mean, obviously a lot of great connections are able to be made here, and so doing the thing that's sometimes hard to do, but like just put yourself out there and ask. I don't know, Katie, and your...
Yeah, I would, I've been grateful to a lot of people, a lot of strong women, as you were saying, over the years. Right now we're moving into a children's media space, which is a different industry for us, and so that's felt like starting back at square one with me and being really humble, and again, just taking advantage of finding commonalities with people. I think when you reach out, if you have a seed of connection, a very pointed question you want to ask, and can sort of grow a relationship out of that. Everyone, generally really wants to help, and if you can be specific, it kind of helps that person know what you're asking of them.
I think that's a really good point in terms of like helping you get to something specific. Trying to figure out a goal that y'all can work to achieve together is something that'll help like drive that mentorship to be really helpful. What about in your experience, Taylor?
I have been really lucky to have like accidental mentors in my life, and I think like as I've gotten older and started to recognize that that's happened, I feel like it's happened because I've always sort of put my truest self forward. So that's sort of like the advice that I give to others is like be yourself, like don't overanalyze like the quality of your work or like your experience or anything like that. Like find, similarly to what Katie said, like commonalities, and like once you share those passions with people, you just kind of organically connect from there. But yeah, I mean, reaching out is the first step as well. Yeah,
and a hard one at that.
Yeah.
What about you, Melanie?
Yeah, I think mentorship has been like a huge factor in my career. It helped me a lot, and I met like people, you know, in the events or through social media or online. And I think for people who want to find a mentor, it's very simple. My advice for you is just to reach out. You can simply send them a DM or, you know, like send them an email. Have a short introduction of yourself, attach one or two your badass work, and just simply describe why you think this person is a perfect fit for you and what do you want to learn from them. And you'll be surprised, like people in this industry is really supportive and it's super friendly. They want to help. So I think because I learned a lot from, you know, mentors and people who I, you know, look up to in the industry, and right now I'm also mentoring some mentees. And the way they found me is also through this very simple action, just reach out. So yeah, definitely I would say just take action.
Could I ask one question about that? If
I think some other advice I might give, and if you're seeing mentees right now, it might be that to make it as easy as possible for you to book time. So if you're a mentee reaching out to someone, giving a window of availability, kind of finding the time that works with their schedule to book that, just making it, eliminating as many hurdles as possible to that like easy
correspondence, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I think one of the things that I found in school is like that was also a really good place to like, find people that were in grades ahead of me or like TAs in college. We were actually down at CoMotion earlier in the year at SCAD, and it was a great event. And was just noticing the population of students was predominantly female. And that's not necessarily reflective of the industry as a whole. And so I'm like, where do they all go? I've read a lot. Would be curious, in y'all's opinion, what do you think about how reflective is our students going to be shifting that kind of paradigm in terms of where the industry currently stands, being predominantly male or white? Megan?
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, that was definitely my experience. I went to SCAD and in the illustration department, it was like, I feel like at least 99% women. It's hard to know like where that difference happens, but I do think like illustration does tend to be one of those fields that even in this industry, like often it has more women than some of the other areas. And I think sometimes when you do see space for yourself somewhere, it's easier to go there, like illustration, which is what I happen to be interested in, but I think sometimes going into other areas, even though you might be welcome, you are aware that there isn't the same space for you maybe as others.
Yeah. And I think it's like important in the places that we're all at is to like, A, recognize it, and B, like work together to figure out a solution. One of the things that trying to figure out where students go is like looking to leadership of like, how many female leaders are there at studios, or in terms of the types of roles that predominantly are more female versus male. Katie, in your opinion, how do you think like leadership can help lead that initiative?
I think I wanted to give a bit of an optimistic take on this, I guess, and it was my first. We attended CoMotion together, and it was my first time kind of being there, and I was just really enthused by that huge female student body. And I don't know if this is naively, but I saw that and I was like, oh, the wave is coming, we still are kind of where we are from where the industry started, but these numbers are going to start trickling up into the studios and into leadership, and I found that really encouraging, and I hope that is the path forward. And I think in my role now, I review applicants and help in the hiring process. And I am pleased to say that many of the last roles we had open for hire were filled by women, and we've just been so impressed by so many of the applicants, and there's just an attention to detail and sort of a big picture holistic view, not only of your work, but what you can bring to the team. And so I wanted to give a ray of hope too, that you're putting that hard work in, and in our small piece of the industry, it's being seen, and
Yeah, I love that. In terms of like looking towards hope while also being a realist, like that's like my life. Trying to just make sure that while like seeing that I'm a producer, like everything's gonna be great until it's not. That like we have to put things into place to make sure that like student populations, if they are female, like diverse populations aren't being forgotten, and trying to make sure that that is across the board. I mean, I think Max said it earlier, like if we want to shift the industry, like the community, like we're here, right? Like these are the conversations that we have to help shift that. What about you in terms of at the mill, Taylor?
Yeah, at the mill, like even I've been in the industry like maybe 5 years, 6 almost, and even in that short span of time, I've seen it change so much. Like I went from being like one of a handful of women at the studio that I was at to being like on a call that was all women, from production, creative operations, to like the actual creative. So yeah, like I feel like Katie and I are on the same page about a lot of things, but similarly, I'm seeing a lot of that, and I think that it becomes like our responsibility then to speak up again, like when we have those opportunities to, and lift each other up as well.
Yeah. Going back to being a realist, getting into money. In terms of the industry, it's pretty varied in terms of like day rates or project rates, or if you're staff somewhere, like salaries. And there's not a ton of transparency, although I know there's a lot of efforts. More recently, there's probably like a zillion Google Sheets of different people starting like, I live in X place and here's what I charge. How do you advocate for yourself if you have this data set that's like literally all over the globe and pretty varied in terms of charging from, you know, pretty low to pretty high? If you're looking for someone to talk to, or how would you go about advocating for yourself in terms of salary negotiations, or making sure that you feel confident and like, this is my day rate and I'm sticking to it? Melanie?
Yeah, I have been in a full-time position for many years, so I can share a little bit of my full-time experience. I think know what you're worth and know your value is very important. So don't overthink it. You can schedule a meeting with your manager, or in like a, you know, in your review process, definitely bring this up. You can itemize or like have a bullet points about your achievements, and just simply show your company, show your manager that I care this company as much as you do. And one advice before you do that, make sure to chat with, you know, talk with people from the industry who are in a similar position as you, do similar things as you, just to get a sense of where you're at the market. So those informations can be really helpful for you to leverage and to, you know, help to have a better conversation with your company. And I know money talk is kind of like a taboo or like a awkward things to, you know, to get into, but you'll be surprised. Again, like this industry, very supportive. So, you know, don't be afraid to bring this up. And if if you cannot find anyone in your circle that willing to have this conversation, you know, come to community. Like there's a lot of awesome community. Mention Panimation, there's like a Slack channel. There's like a Slack channel dedicated for this kind of topic. So people, you know, ask questions about like, oh, how do I charge my day rate? How do I ask for a raise? Things like that. And yeah, people are willing to help. People are eager to help. Yeah. That's my advice.
I think that's also important to note that like money and salaries are taboo, but it also like keeps everybody down if we don't talk about it, right? And so I think the addition of people adding to those sheets probably made a lot of people realize like that they have been underpaying themselves, and like that's really important, right? Because, you know, if you're not aware of what everyone else is charging, you're kind of blind to what your value is. And to your point of like knowing your value and talking to people that are in similar roles or in similar places, I think is just really important.
And I think one thing to add, I think consistent and persistent is key here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about from a freelance perspective, Megan?
Yeah, I feel like from freelance, I think like I've been lucky to be able to have like a lot of open conversations with other freelancers and like really get a good idea, because I've definitely been in that place of, you know, not being sure of a rate or like when is the right time to raise it and how to do so. And I think, so it's always been really important to me to like make sure, because then when you are a freelancer, you're just fully advocating for yourself. So like, you know, really getting that transparency of like, okay, what should I be, like what, you know, and knowing your own value with that, because in that position, you know, anyone would accept a lower rate just fine from you.
Sure.
So yeah, I think just like kind of learning, but you really do have to have conversations with other people to figure that out for sure.
Yeah, I'd be interested from, Katie, from your perspective in the studio space, like how has that been?
Yeah, well,
Recently.
speaking from the studio side about day rates and interfacing with freelancers, you know, I know I can speak for us, we are always petrified to insult anyone. You know, we will send maybe a rate and see if that suits people. And the best thing to do if it is not a match for you is just to reply back in a really respectful way and say, my rate is actually this, if we could get close to that next time. I will say on our end, we don't sit there and go, you know, like strike that person's name off. We'll never work with them. It's just, okay, I'm so thankful for that. Next time we'll budget correctly to make sure you can be part of the project. So never be scared to, again, say what you're worth and kind of stand by that. And then, you know, being in-house and kind of reaching for those promotions or a salary raise when it's appropriate. I am a dedicated flea marketer, and so I feel like when Katie was speaking earlier in the first presentation to practicing negotiation, that was something that she had to do in terms of negotiating for like project rates. And just through practice, that comfort comes. So like out in the flea market world, aside from emotions and your own value, you know, you're working towards the value of what you think this thing is, and you can kind of have a back and forth and exchange with someone. And like, honestly, I felt like that's just made me really comfortable having those conversations. So if you can either do that or find a place to debate a thing that's separate, you'll feel more confident in kind of standing up for your opinion and knowing where you stand.
I love that. All right, pack it up. There's a great flea market down the road. Katie's going to give us all firsthand experience of how to negotiate. It actually is a great flea market. You should go.
Okay.
I would love to hear in terms of efforts in the community to be more inclusive. I mean, like the talks this morning already have given us great insight into that. Michaela's was awesome. In terms of, I mean, there's a lot of ways to be inclusive, right? Like the makeup of the team who's working on a project, the actual like designs themselves. Like, how are y'all pushing yourselves or the people you work with to be inclusive of gender and sexual orientation and race?
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I like pride myself on being a resource for other people. Like that's just what I like about my job. And so, like we said, like there are a lot more women coming into this field, but they tend to be on the junior side and relative to the more senior artists that we have on our team. So what I try to do is encourage like the more senior artists and like others around me to bring in the junior artists on projects if they have downtime, and like making sure that you're going out of your way to give other people opportunities, and not just for like saving face or like this is what we're bid for, but like no, like we want to invest in you.
Because it helps them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Melody?
Yeah, I think I can share a little bit of a personal story.
Yeah.
So being in that situation, definitely where I was the only woman, Asian, and international person. So to be honest, it felt really, how do I say this, like uncomfortable, and I feel I'm voiceless, I'm, like unheard. But I was really fortunate that my teammate at that time, because they know my skill sets, they know my value, and they have also noticed the situation. So they will try to throw opportunities at me, especially during the meetings. They will bring something up like, oh, I think the style, Meryn is really good at this style. How about let her lead the project, or how about bring her on the team? And they will encourage me to speak more, anticipate in the meeting and the projects, and that means a lot to me. And I feel like you don't need to be an Asian, you don't need to be women, you don't need to look like me. Everyone can be an ally, and just take small actions that can make a huge shift. So yeah, and I think I have the voice, to speak up, to have more opportunity because of that. And so right now I'm also doing the same thing, like whenever in the meeting I try to pay more attention on those underrepresented, like friends. So I'm also throwing these ideas out there, like you don't need to do much, just, like share a little kindness and just be a little more thoughtful. That could help the situation. Just, let's cultivate this inclusive culture.
If I could just add to that. Oh, Taylor wants to
Jinx.
too.
I was just gonna say, like, keep your circle permeable. Like, let people come in and out of it, and invite people in all the time.
Yeah, but making the space, I feel like in the world of digital calls and Zoom, it's even more important to remember who's on the call, remember the talents of those people. And because it's such a, it goes against the grain of normal conversation, you do have to intentionally kind of be like, oh, so-and-so, I think you had a good idea to add here, or do you have something to say? What's your input on this story, or, this or that, and just making sure you are holding a window open for people to participate. Because I think, like, especially in that environment, we're a remote team, the natural instinct can be like, I don't want to throw a wrench in this conversation, or I'm just going to kind of sit back. So really calling that out and giving it space. I think that's great, Melody.
Or like your Zoom is laggy, so you both talk at the same time. But
Yeah.
then you're like, no, I'm shouting. Like, you know, I think it's, again, going back to like making space, whether that's digital space or real space. I think it goes back to what we can all do to advocate for each other. I mean, like, it really keys in on your point, Melody, that acknowledging underrepresented people in a room or in a project with you, like, how do you support them so that they can continue to grow? I think it kind of goes back to like that mentorship idea of just being aware of other people in your space and how they might be feeling about a project or about what a client says to them or like stuff like that, really advocating for each other. How do you feel like you are able to do that in terms of freelance if you're like popping into teams? I mean, you're seeing like a lot of different insights of how different teams work or operate.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, it definitely is different. Like when I was in a staff position, I did try to like notice maybe especially like interns or someone really new coming in, like if no one was looking out for them, to try to like, you know, just even having one person you can talk to, and especially sometimes women or, you know, people that maybe are having trouble using their voice a little bit. For freelance, like that is definitely harder to do sometimes. Like I've definitely been on plenty of projects where though like recently was on something this year and tried to at least just like, you know, it wasn't for me to necessarily be talking during the meeting. I'm also just like a participant, but just kind of like checking in with her on Slack and, you know, like kind of then chatting with her, and she didn't need my help necessarily, but like just making sure she had someone to talk to throughout the project because she hadn't worked with studios much before. And so even though I was in like a freelance role and so was she, like I think it ended up being really great to kind of just make sure that like she was feeling comfortable and understood everything. Yeah,
again, it's like just having someone there that you know is there. I mean, pretty early on, and I was at an agency, and there was an account director who was, I mean, she's just a badass. And just being able to have her like in my corner to go to have questions for, like, that's just such a valuable add, really any time in your career, but like especially early on for me it was. In terms of motherhood in the industry, I'm a working mom. Ooh, there's the mic. Have a 6-year-old at home. We do our affirmations every morning. I am strong. I can do this. I am powerful. I am smart.
I think Mom led that clap.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
Clap of moms.
In terms of, like, it's just another thing to think about if you want to have kids, if you don't want to have kids, like, has your position in the industry or where you are currently, like, has that made a decision or made you think about motherhood differently, if that's something that you're interested in? Taylor?
I am not a mother, but I have massive respect for moms because I do not understand how y'all manage to have a career and do it. It's
a lot of coffee.
It definitely like made me see motherhood differently, and I think probably like delayed that thinking for me. Like early on, it was very much like cut your teeth, like do everything you possibly can, and I was like, this is my one and only priority right now, you know? So like, I'm not old, I'm like kind of old, but like,
She's not old.
but I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, like I really have to make this decision, and yeah, I think that like, yeah, we face another level of pressure when it comes to just life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that sucks.
Yeah, I would like to add on. So I just had this very heated conversation with my friends. We're talking about whether freezing our eggs just to buy more time in the industry, because there's still our dreams and goals that we want to pursue. But at the same time, you know, it's like a biological clock. I feel like it's unfair, but it's kind of sad that we have to choose one over another. I know there are like, you know, the environment has run a lot better after COVID. I know more companies and studios are doing like flexible working hours, hybrid schedules. So I think that's really helping the environment and let moms or parents to have a confidence to, you know, take care of both. But I feel like the fact that we're still having this conversation, there's an issue there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I really hope that, you know, in like a perfect world, our industry, we don't even need to worry about this, and we can pursue both, you know, dreams or directions at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it kind of goes back to like advocating yourself and then asking for help, which I am absolutely awful at. Like asking for help, you know? And so in terms of like seeing if you never see something, you can't imagine yourself there, right? So like if you want to be a mother or a working mother, like if we don't see positions of people doing that, then it doesn't look achievable to anyone, right? And so again, it kind of goes back to like, what do we want to shift this industry towards, and trying to make sure that people don't have to make that as like a choice if they don't want to, that they can do it all, but no one does, just so you know. What in terms of like exciting, what are you looking forward to or seeing like female directors or projects, like going back to Katie being an optimist, ending on an optimistic note? What do y'all feel like like Barbie, hello, Greta. Any projects that y'all seen that you're like really excited about?
I would love to give a shout out to, I feel like she's my mentor, inspiration, but also I so admire the work of my friend Elise Kelly. She started the studio. Oh, we have some fans out here, okay. I can't wait to go back and tell her about that. She started the studio Neon Zoo, and she just always does such incredible, like, insightful, powerful work. Like, there's something that comes through in her storytelling that's just unique to her experience and abilities, and I always wonder, like, how does Elise make that great work? And I got to work with her on a project together and kind of got to see behind the curtain of just the sensitivity towards like the characters in the storytelling, the symbolism of things, how we're speaking to experience. Like, I was not getting away with just easy out, this iconography matches this in the script. It's like, no, what is the purpose and what is the deeper message we can be saying behind that? And that's just like how her work really shines. And I just think that that is a power of hers, and a power of hers as a woman, perhaps. And I was just excited to be inspired by that and kind of take that with me too. What about you all?
I think what we're doing right now, it's something worth celebrating. Like, yeah. Like, so thanks for Dash, doing this. I think, we're having this like genuine, very honest conversation about what's going on in the industry and our thoughts. And I think this is like a huge thing. So I really do hope like, we can have more of this in the future. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, great. We're going to go to the flea market, and then we're all going to go to the Barbie movie. Like, that's just what the rest of the day is going to be like. Awesome. Well, thank y'all so much. Give them a round of applause.